Hi, everyone. This is Maya Hollyshed from the Wando Mount Pleasant Library for Indie Authors Week. And today we have local author Savannah Frierson who will talk about her romance books. Welcome, Savannah.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes. So, like I said, this is about Indie Authors Week. And my first question is um, give me, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your books are about.
So my name is Savannah J Frierson, and I was raised in Blythewood, South Carolina, which is right outside of Columbia, South Carolina. And I went to school for undergrad at Harvard University, and then worked in the publishing field as a proofreader for an academic publisher before moving back down to South Carolina and to Charleston to work at the College of Charleston's Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture. I write romance and women's fiction, primarily about Black women. Um, and I am really trying to delve into how Black women are loved and being loved in a fictional space, and how we can, apply or even just make sure that we are really going for and advocating for being loved in a transcendental way.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. She has like several books, Being Plumville, Trolling Knives. I'm probably missing some in here as well.
Go with Your Heart is a historical. I just did a Juneteenth novella that came out this September. Um, yeah, Reconstructing Jada Channing, which was also my college thesis that helped me graduate. So shout out to that one. Yeah, I have several titles, but you can visit my website, www.sjfbooks.com, to get all those titles.
Okay, great. My next question is, when did you first realize you wanted to be an author?
Uh, Junior year in high school, when I should have been studying for an AP test. That's when I knew. you know, that's what I knew, because I was sitting there writing a story instead of studying for the AP test. I'm like, this is probably not the wisest of choices that I'm making, but I passed the AP test, so that's good. But that
Hey,
also,
yeah.
that's what I wanted to do as a career, was to write books and just be involved with words. So luckily, I've been able to do that.
Great. My next question is, how long does it take for you to write your book and the type of research that you do for them?
It depends on the book, for both of those questions. The shortest time that I took to write a full length novel was probably 8 months. And that contrasts with the story that I'm just now putting out on submission that has taken over 10 years.
Wow.
And then the research, I've gone to archival websites. Like for the one that's on sub right now, I went to the Kansas State Archives to look up information about John Brown and, the, I'm blanking on what it was called. But oh gosh, I'm blanking on it. But basically, the skirmishes that happened before the official start of the Civil War that was happening in Kansas, I was doing a lot of research on that. I am so sorry that I'm blanking on it
That's
right now.
okay.
But then also, there's also contemporary research that you have to do. So even if you're writing contemporaries, most of the time we are giving our characters occupations that we don't personally do. So we
Right.
have to look what that means. So for example, one story that I wrote for last year was a Christmas novelette. One of my heroine was in STEM, so she did work on trying to um, figure out how to create drugs for dementia patients. And then the hero of that romance was a pilot. So I had to look up what would a typical schedule be between his hub city to wherever to his domestic routes that he tends to fly, and see if the theory that I'm trying to, the
Right.
situation build makes sense within that context. So yes, it's fiction, but you still want to have it grounded in some kind of truth, because I will tell you, readers are very smart.
Yes,
And
they
if you
are.
write something that does not read true, they will let you know. Sometimes, and I would say most often, very nicely, but other times, you just want to make sure that you can at least support why you made a certain decision. So, research is important regardless.
Okay. All right. My next question is, why did you take the independent route instead of the traditional route? And did you try to go through the traditional route, the big five first?
Yes. So when I first started writing, or first decided that I wanted to start publishing my work, it was 2005, 2006. So independent publishing was not as accessible as it is now. So truly one of the most reliable ways to get to market was through the traditional route. So I did do the query letters to agents and even to publishers that allowed for unsolicited manuscripts. But the feedback that I was getting was beyond the typical, oh, we're not interested, or this isn't right for us. The feedback I was getting was essentially, we don't know what to do with this, which is a little bit different than, for me anyway, a typical rejection letter of, I just need to find the right house. And that's still true. That I'm not saying that if I hadn't kept pursuing that I probably wouldn't have eventually found it. But I felt so strongly in Being Plumber, which is my debut novel, that the feedback that I was getting was less about my ability to execute a story and more about they don't know what to do with the story at all. And so I knew what to do with the story. So I decided, well, hey, I'll just go put it out myself and show, the agents and the publishers that there is a market for the types of stories that I'm telling. And then maybe something will happen from that. And something did happen from that. I did eventually get an agent without having to go through the rigmarole of querying and all that, because she saw that I can produce a book. I'm not just full of ideas but don't have the execution behind it, but also I have a readership that has enjoyed what I've been putting out. So that showed me that there is power not only in being able to shepherd your own projects, but also being able to not just pivot, but to go in various different directions from your own, sweat and tears, so to speak.
Right.
I am a big advocate of getting to the market with as many avenues as possible. So indie route, traditional route. Some people are now doing, sub-rights with movies and television shows and all sorts of plays, all sorts of other mediums. So I am, and for those types, you do need an agent. But for right now, if you're really just focused on trying to get a book to market, there's no reason not to, at least investigate the independent route.
Okay. All right. Next question is, if you do have a publisher, what is the name of it and how did you find them? And are they local, regional, or national?
I do not have a publisher right now,
Okay.
but I am pursuing. Like I said, I have a book project on submission, and I just submitted a proposal for another publisher. So I'm just waiting to hear back from my agent about if she likes the proposal and if she's going to move forward. So cross fingers that she did. It
Okay.
took me a while to figure out what I was going to write because 2020 has been.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, that's all we have to say about 2020. Even though people are looking at this in 2021, 2020 is the past, and hopefully 2021 will be better.
Yes, amen.
Yes. Um, did you edit your own stuff? Did you hire your own editor? Since you did not go through a publisher?
So yes, if you can afford it, I would definitely encourage people to hire editors, copy editors, proofreaders, cover artists. I would definitely encourage that because they have the expertise that you might eventually learn, but there's something to be said about expediency. Like, you're the expert. I don't have to, like, as an author, your area of expertise is the creation of the story. So if you can like offload those other words onto other people and pay them to do that, I would encourage you. But I also understand that for many of us, especially when we're just getting started, you can't afford that extra help. So I had with being Plumville, I hired a proofreader to help me, and I had some editorial help with the company that I used to get the book out. But yes, I especially now, I definitely hire an editor. I don't have the energy like I used to.
Right.
I have the time. So yeah, I mean, I definitely encourage people when they start, independently publishing, to try to have as best of a budget up front as possible, so that you know what you need to either save or what your target might be in terms of sales. Those things always help. But and if you can't hire anybody, try to find somebody who is good at least grammar, or find a reader friend, not an honest reader friend, truthful feedback on how your story is shaping and how they think the story will be received on the market. So, for example, if you have two reader friends and you write, for example, romance, one of them reads thrillers and biographies, and the other one reads romance. Please give the romance project to the romance reader, because biography or the thriller reader is not going to be as sensitive to the beats that a romance market expects. So those are things that can help you when you don't have cash on hand to go to a professional development editor or to go to a professional copy editor, those things like that.
Okay. All right. My next question is, what is one of the most surprising things you have learned about creating books and self-publishing? And if you could give us the process in brief detail.
One of the most surprising things that I have learned while being an independent publisher is how quickly you learn about the publishing industry in general. It's not as siloed, I think, as folks might think it is. I mean, there are principles that independently published authors have to know, that in a way makes them better positioned for if and when they transition into a traditional publishing space. So for me, marketing, I had no idea what a market was, what it is, how to do it. I'm like, I have a story that I want to read, Toni Morrison, and so I'm gonna write it and put it out there and go with God. That's literally what I did with the thing Plumville. And now it's like, oh no, you gotta have a strategy, honey. You gotta post on social media at least 3 times a week, and you have to send out emails at least twice a month, like all sorts of things. And then how to find your audience, like go to these platforms. Oh, and collaborations. I did not know that you have to collaborate as an author, because I thought being an author is that you could be in your house by yourself and just write your book and be done with it. Because that's part of why I wanted to be an author. Like, I could just be in the closet or something. Nobody has to know what I look like. I could just be world renowned and left alone. No, can't do that no more. You have to be present. And I'm still a little bit salty about that, not gonna lie, but you just learn how to overcome certain things that you thought you couldn't do as an independent author. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's really a process other than trial and error, but I do think that you get a little bit quicker about what is going to be a successful trial and how and how much air you are comfortable with.
Okay. All right. You mentioned that you're working on some new things. Could you talk about that, or can you get
Yeah, well, the proposal that I just did was for a romance featuring a single father of two young girls, and he's a high school football coach, and the heroine is a moderately well-known news reporter, and the way that they connect is that she has a moment that was captured on video with his daughters at a natural hair salon, and it goes viral. And so that's the impetus of how they enter each other's orbits. And so essentially folks are kind of watching their somewhat courtship via social media. So we'll see if that's the theory or the proposal as of right now. That can change. That's a part of a proposal. Proposals are like, here's an idea. What do you think? And then you workshop that with your agent, and then if and when you get an editor, they help you refine that even more. And a lot of times the idea that you initially had may be very different from what the final product is, but the hope is the final product is the true story that you actually wanted to tell. Because usually, an idea is just a seed, but you don't know how it's going to sprout. Yeah.
My last question is, what advice would you give for authors and writers who want to publish?
Patience and tenacity. Those are you have to have both. And if you don't have them at the start, be open to getting them as you go forth. Because tenacity, because you will encounter many roadblocks and many detours and many having to go back and go around in an even longer way than you had anticipated. And patience, because for you hear these authors and they seem like they have just sprouted out out of nowhere, but it's very rare that an author hits it with their actual debut work. Like Being Plumville is not even my very first original story that I wrote. That was reconstructing Jada Channing, but I didn't release that one until 4 titles later. So yeah, it's gonna take some patience and some tenacity. And I think the last thing I would say is to have some grit. You're just gonna you have to know that the story that you're trying to get out to the market is a story that the market wants. Now, especially if you're going the traditional route, it might be a harder sell, but that's why we have independent publishing. For if you get too many no's for your peace of mind, and I mean more than like, you got to get at least 25, 50. I mean, but I would say do your research about which path to market is the best for what project you have. And I had one more thought and I lost it. But I think those are some pretty decent pieces of advice that I kind of wish that I had known or let it really sink in when I first started. But there's something to be said about, just stepping out on faith and being willing to land where you do. Oh, I'm gonna piggyback and I'm gonna go back to collaborations. Please be open to collaborations and not just the obvious ones. Like, one of my biggest supporters when I first started writing was an public health official. She was not English. She was not, she wasn't an author. She wasn't in the publishing field, but she was somebody who just helped me keep going and told me that, you know, I have, my story is good, my writing is good, you have something to say, like, you know, and making sure that you have people surrounding you who can support you, even if they don't understand what you're writing or what, like, the nuts and bolts of it, but just somebody who can, you know, that you can go to if you're having a low moment, who can help you get back up level so you can keep going.
That's some great advice. Thank you so much for talking with us today, Savannah. Really enjoyed it, and I hope inspiring authors are inspired by your talk and hope they get some valuable tips.
Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to share them. Thank you.